I'm having a wonderful chat. It looks like finally we got the resources to work here with American composer Douglas Anderson. Where are you, by the way? You're in the East someplace. Where are you?
East. I'm just about 10 miles east of Poughkeepsie, New York, which is on the Hudson River. So I'm
Nice.
in the town of LaGrange, right off the Taconic, for those who know New York geography, north of the city, about 75 miles.
So, in other words, in the middle of a lovely village type setting on the Hudson River School, I love. Go ahead.
Yeah, the
In it,
Hudson Valley. Yeah, Hudson River School.
yeah.
That's,
I have two
yep,
Hudson
as you
River
drive
School.
around.
I have two Hudson River School paintings. Love that period. Also, an 1860 house we talked earlier. I mean,
Yes.
how upper New York State is that? Wherever that is.
Yeah, it
Anyway,
was one of the earliest houses in this area.
God,
Um,
amazing, just
so,
amazing. Well, we are here to talk about things musical. Uh, Doug Anderson, I have just finished finally listening to and reviewing his wonderful CD of chamber symphonies, three of them, chamber
yeah,
symphonies 2, 3, and 4. And I'll be putting that up soon at performingartsreview.net. And we're just going to talk about what the life is of a composer, let alone a psychologist. What is this? I read that you have, I hate people like this who get 3 degrees, especially one in psychology and then a doctorate in composition. Give me a break. Tell me,
yeah.
what is
Well,
that?
as you know, I started as a jazz musician when I was young, and
12, folks. Hello,
by
everybody.
by the
12.
time I went to college, I realized a I had to be a musician in my life, and b I didn't want to be an instrumental musician because it meant in order to play at a high level, I'd have to practice 4 hours, 5 hours every day. And, it's like being a professional athlete. And I went to college, and because of my background, and I've done a lot of playing and studying, I was given advanced placement in all the music major courses. So I went right into like the third level of theory, and
Uh,
I skipped entirely all the ear training because I could hear and write down whatever I heard. So they skipped me out of that.
are we talking perfect
And
pitch? Are we talking perfect pitch? It's
no,
just there. Okay. Just good.
no, I just, when I was a 13-year-old discovering jazz, I thought it would be really great if my middle school band could play big band music. So I hammered out on the piano the arrangements. I listened to the records and figured out the arrangements and wrote out the parts. And then they told me, "Oh, you can buy these in stores." I thought that would be anyway. I went to college and I finished a music major in a couple of years, and I had 2 more years of college to do something with. So I took some graduate music classes as well, and then I majored in psychology because I figured, what is the business of music is putting sounds into people's brains to mess around with your brain,
Yeah.
and I ought to understand human brains then. So I majored in psychology.
Boy, you got that one right, by the way. Although you're the first composer to actually say so out front. Of the many composers I know, they kind of always look at you with this sly little look as if, well, discover what I've hidden for you. They're always so sly about it. You just said straight out, oh, yeah, I'm a fool with people's brains. So I figured I needed
Right.
a psych degree. I mean, that's perfect. Well, not only that, but I noticed that, two of these symphonies are from the same year, as I recall, 2016. Have I got that close? The number 2 and the number 4. We're talking chamber symphonies,
Number
as in chamber music symphonies, for everybody just to get a handle on. We'll talk about that in a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah,
But
they're for chamber ensembles. They're actually, for number two is 1989, number three is 2001, and number four is 2011.
okay, sorry, I got that one completely messed up. But my
Okay,
point is, not only did this is this kind of, well, first of all, it's beautiful, beautiful writing. I mentioned to you off
thank you.
air a little earlier, and I don't mean just beautiful, beautiful writing, some kind of hollow compliment. I mean what I told you. I'll try and describe it again. Something about me. I mean, I've been listening to music a long time, since I was 12 years old, and then, and all the rest of it. And now I'm a so-called critic and so on. I listen attentively and I hope intelligently, and with my conducting training. When I hear music that absolutely perfectly works, and I know you know what I'm trying to say to you. That's when I know, oh boy, now we're home free. Now we can really, and that's the kind of composer you are. Beautiful, beautiful pairing, beautiful narrative, beautiful colorations, in lovely the violin clarinet. Colors together, these do all of that. I mean, it's compositional. It's in a way, everybody in composition
Right.
knows this, but it's about how people use these understandings, and you use them very well in these beautiful, really symphonies. They're very complex. They're not easy. They're very difficult. They fill a reasonable program. Speaking of Haydn, as we mentioned earlier, about maybe that length.
Right. Right.
Each of these three, and they are chamber works in the same way. Since we were on Haydn earlier off camera, just beautiful. But you also have all this interest, all this eclectic, and I use that word as a great compliment interest because I've discovered this tremendous eclectic interest in all these wonderful musicians I'm meeting and CDs I'm taping. Tell me a little bit about give me an overview of your catalog because it covers so much.
Well, I, yeah, well, I began as a jazz musician, and but as I was growing up, I was also playing a lot of classical music, playing in orchestras. I became a conductor. Um, when I was in college, I wrote music for the marching band. They would say we need such and such a song by Thursday night, and so I'd have to knock out an arrangement. And believe me, it gave me such an appreciation for Bach.
Hmm.
That here I am writing these little marching band arrangements. He's doing whole cantata, every Sunday.
Do Sunday, yeah.
I'm thinking he's the man. He's the man. But I just am always interested, and I find it hard to actually define. I've been struggling for it. I'm interested in any music that has intelligence behind it. I find that really fun to listen to and interesting, and it the most fun I have when I go to a concert is when I have to pull out my pencil in the middle of the concert and start sketching something because I'm hearing something and it's like, oh, this is so cool,
Mhm.
and I could do this now. But listen to what he's doing, and anyway,
You,
so
you put your finger on it, intelligent. You put your finger
yeah,
right on it.
intelligence, and
Yeah.
I've been trying to figure out how do I define that to people. I know it when I hear it. Is the
But what
best I
about
can
this whole
say.
thing? I mean, I noticed you've written. Give me, the electronic music. You've explored all these different compositional styles. Did any of these adventures stick in your craw before you say, nah, never again, or do some forms beckon you back? How does that? How where
They
are you?
they oh, they're all calling to me. Uh, um,
Beautifully put.
I, I've written. I got into conducting operas, and that got me into writing operas. I had written a few songs along the way, but then I got into writing operas, and because I really am interested in music as a theatrical event. I just One of the pieces that I've written that hasn't been premiered yet is a set of reverse variations on Arkansas Traveler, which is that country tune with the jokes. And I thought, what about doing it reverse variations where the melody gradually comes into focus, but you're making the jokes all along the way. So actually, anything like that. I'm interested in. I did. A friend of mine asked me to write some music for a viola ensemble, and by the way, they all play at different levels. And so I'm thinking, very advanced and very beginner. Okay, what can I do? I came across this song called "The Rights of Man" from like 1720,
Hmm.
a real
Hmm.
ancient fiddle tune, and who I heard this San Francisco group, the Waybacks, do, and so I took that tune and I wrote it in four parts for four violas, which I've since rewritten for other ensembles because it works very nicely. And there's some hard parts and there's some very easy parts, and so I'm influenced by all sorts of things. It's really hard to categorize.
It is, and that must have something to do with that psychology degree. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep rubbing that
Yeah.
in.
Uh huh.
Curiosity,
Uh huh.
curiosity about the human condition. and understanding it.
Sure,
That's my supreme
sure,
compliment, and that's also what I hear. And I'm going to now let you loose on these three symphonies in just a minute. But here's what I hear in these wonderful chamber symphonies. You're going to tell us about the ensembles the friends, I presume of some years
sure.
that are playing as well for you. But I'm going to just kind of dish it back at you to give us a little overview without getting too lost in compositional details of these three chamber symphonies on this disc, numbers 2, 3, and 4. Help! I forgot what I was going to say. Well, let's just go. Why don't give me an overview? For example, the second symphony. It's a little darker of the three in my view. It's a little more
Yeah,
serious. Go
possibly.
ahead.
Well, it's number two because I wrote one chamber symphony when I was a student. I had already conducted one of at that point one of Schoenberg's chamber symphonies, and I thought, oh, let me write one. I was still writing student kinds of works, and I wrote a chamber symphony, and it worked moderately well. Um, and then a few years later, these guys, the Opal Window Chamber Ensemble, and I was involved with the players individually in various other projects, and they said, "Oh, we're doing this big concert, and why don't you write a piece?" And so I wrote this. I thought, "Oh, let me write a chamber symphony for them." And
Tell me the
the
orchestration, just
concert,
so people know. Tell us the orchestration
well,
so
it's
people
for
understand.
flute, clarinet, violin, and cello. And the concert was the Society for Thanatology was somehow was sponsoring this concert, and
Bless them.
so all the music was, and I conducted on that Crumb's piece, the Ancient Voices of Children, um, which was wonderful to conduct. And so I knew my piece was going to be on a program with that piece, and I thought, well, what do I do? And so I sort of thought, let me write a piece that sort of brings in all the composers that might have influenced me. And I had the very towards the end of that, where the tremolos and the little cadenzas with the woodwinds, that that was suggested to me by Shostakovich's Eighth Symphony. There's
Hmm.
a long string tremolo where there's stuff going on, and I thought, oh, I can do that, but I can use that in this piece. And the very beginning of the piece is the just the very beginning, the very direct quote of Mozart's Dissonant quartet, string quartet, and
See how these
and then I
composers do this. They lay all these little tricks and traps. It's amazing. It's
yeah,
wonderful.
and then I go different directions, but and so yeah, that's how that one came together, and it was a lot of fun to work with, and then fun to rehearse it with the players, and they
Yeah.
did a fine performance, and then um, and
Number three.
so then
Yeah,
the next
the
one,
number
number
three symphony.
three, a different group called Eight Strings and a Whistle, which is flute,
Interesting.
viola, and cello, and again players that I knew from just doing other things, and they say, oh, we have this new group and we're looking for some pieces, and I said, well, okay, what kind of other pieces are you doing for your for this kind of ensemble? And they had found other works from other composers, and so I thought, all right, let me see if I could write a piece that fits on a program like that. So most of the music that they were doing was not at all contemporary music. It was, they were doing music from the 18th century and 19th century and early 20th century. And so I had, and they were doing it for audiences of non-musicians
Mm-hmm.
largely, and going out and doing concert tours at public libraries and things like that. And I thought, okay, I have to write a piece that people who know nothing about music will be entertained by, but people who know a lot about music. And remember, I went to graduate school at Columbia, so you know, I was surrounded by people who counted pitches, and so I wanted those people to be entertained as well. And so that's sort of the challenge, is to write something that works on multiple levels. Whatever you bring to it, that's what you can hear.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than
Um,
having people running screaming out of the auditorium in the middle of the performance. So
Nothing,
one does
yeah,
have to
nothing worse.
one does
Uh,
have to modify
um,
one's approach.
right,
But it's
right,
a
right.
beauty.
To have,
It's a beauty.
yeah. So anyway, that's sort of my approach in those kinds of in those pieces. And then the Fourth Chamber Symphony. again, another group of players that I knew from various places called division, with periods
Yeah,
between syllables,
interesting.
because again, they 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 built themselves as a group based on an 18th century idea in
Mm.
England of a group that could play different kind of combinations of things, and so they asked me to write something for their piano trio, so violin, cello, and piano, and I thought, oh, this is suitable for another chamber symphony, and
By the
so
way,
that
on your recording of these three chamber symphonies, what is almost shocking to hear the piano in the Fourth Symphony. In other words, the color is so surprising compared to the two previous. It's
compared to the
just
other two,
yeah,
yes,
yeah. It's a,
I
just
I was aware of that and working with that. I mean, I'd written for piano before, obviously, but within the context of these and creating the recording, and I thought, well, that's just something we have to deal with. I mean, it is what
it
it
was
is.
it's wonderful on the disc because it's just this bright surprise that to have that additional and different color. Uh, the piano.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
hadn't really
it's
it really struck me. Anyway, I thought it was brilliant.
yeah. Well, but again, as with the second chamber symphony, and the third as well, you have what instruments you have, and you have to
Yeah.
make 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 do with the colors, and it's not just make
Mm-hmm.
do. I had an orchestration teacher once who told me, whenever you have some kind of orchestrational problem, turn it into an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
If you have some instrument and it doesn't fit with the other instruments, well, then
And
make that an advantage
let's just drop a
rather than a
name,
disadvantage.
Charles Warren, and studying composition, or at
Well,
least
I studied
attending
with,
some
yeah, it wasn't
workshops with
Warren and
Charles Warren, and give me
that,
a
but
break. That's incredible, among others.
I did study with Warren, and I learned. I mean, it was like being mentally slapped in the head. You know, look,
Brilliant,
look,
brilliant,
listen,
brilliant.
look,
Yeah.
listen, and I mean, he was so good as a teacher. A lot of the students didn't appreciate it. I mean, he was not the teacher who held your hand and said, "Well, this is very nice" and all that. No, he simply told you, "This works. Here's why it works." Or first he would say, "Here's what you're trying to do. Here's
Mm-hmm.
what works. Here's what doesn't work. Here's why the things that don't work don't work. Here's why the things that do work do work. Thank you."
Wow.
That's I mean, it was like, wow. First of all, here's what you're trying to do, and it's like he's reading my mind, of course,
Yeah.
and and then
Brilliant
and
teaching.
then to just say, here's how to make it work better.
Brilliant teaching.
That was terrific.
I'm going to wind it down here pretty soon, but people are always so curious. Is there how do I put it? You know what I'm trying to say? Something about I kind of think I know how come I'm a musician, going way, 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 way back before I knew that I
Uh-huh.
was going to be a musician. Is there anything there in terms of your family or your experience or something? You know what I mean? When something just went
Yes,
click.
but funny you should ask that. Um, both of my grandmothers were professional pianists. Back
Bingo.
in the teens and 20s and 30s of the 20th century, they played professionally, and um, one of their fathers, my great grandfather on my father's side, was a choral conductor, and so my parents grew up with mothers who were musicians. Both of my grandfathers were very pleased to have talented wives, but they had regular jobs, and that was fine. They weren't musicians at all. But so my parents both grew up making music, and they were amateur musicians. And when in my generation, we all were taught piano. I started at the age of 5. Everybody's going to learn to play piano. I like to say I learned to read music before I learned to read English,
Mm.
and I switched to clarinet, and then to saxophone, and then to trumpet, and then to I mean, I started adding on instruments because I was just addicted, um, and I also had there's one other thing, is that when I was in first grade and I was sitting there in the classroom, um, And I realized, and they were teaching whatever they were teaching in first grade, and I realized everybody in this room thinks differently from me. And
Ooh,
I
that's pretty
remember
deep.
having that thought, and I mean, I've always remembered having that thought, and then I thought, okay, you know,
You know what? I don't
that's
remember having that kind of a profound thought when I was in first grade. So congratulations.
well, I didn't even think of it as profound. It's just, oh, this is the way it is. Okay, in order for me to communicate with him, I have to speak like this
Ah.
because that's not the way I'm thinking. And
Hmm.
then I realized I'm sort of focusing on nonverbal thinking, and which is what led me to be a musician.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Eventually I
easy.
realized I have to be a musician. I thought for a while I was going to be a lawyer, and then I realized, duh, no, I'm going to be a musician.
With a reserve psychology degree. Sorry, just in case, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, the degree it means I can go out and be your therapist, but
yeah, that's what I
I'm
meant.
not really interested.
Of course not. Douglas Anderson, American composer Doug Anderson. We're talking about a million things, but I'm going to be putting up my review of his CD of his Chamber Symphonies 2, 3, and 4 at performingartsreview.net. I promise, this has been, I don't know how many months now, I've been trying to catch up. I made the mistake of saying,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, everybody, come on, come on, come on. And they did. So, but in any
the
case,
floodgates open.
the floodgates opened, and anyway, I'm catching up. But the bottom line is, it's a wonderful recording, a beautiful instrumentation, as we've discussed, chamber instrumentation, wind, strings, and the most delicious, just colorations. I can't think of any other way. The way you use color with these instruments, and mood and rhythm and all the rest of it. Uh,
Oh,
and
I
then,
appreciate that.
what's this about? And I understand there's a new one coming out. Chamber Symphonies, which
Yeah,
and
I
which.
just released just a few days ago. I'll hold it up. Hold up,
I
CD.
put it up on the
This is
on your page at Performing Arts
here's the
Review.
chamber symphonies.
Thank you for
Here's the
showing that.
chamber symphony.
Yeah,
This is the new CD, which is called One at a Time, and it's solo instrument works
wonderful.
for all instrumental, but all one person playing only.
Who?
Um,
I mean,
oh, different
oh yeah,
There's a flute
I thought you had
a
me in a
flute
trap
piece,
there for a
viola
second.
piece, a horn piece. The only exception is there is on this one there's a piece for clarinet and tape, um, which is so there is accompaniment, but there's a couple of solo piano pieces and a trumpet piece, a suite wedding music that I wrote for my own wedding
Nice.
when
That saved a buck or two.
we did, yeah, we didn't have we weren't going to have do it in a church. We're doing it in a special location. I thought, oh, let me write pieces, little pieces, and then I turned it into a set of pieces. So yeah,
Nice.
a real variety of pieces from going back to the mid '70s and coming into the 21st century. So interesting. I enjoy it. So
Wonderful.
that and that's to me that's the most important thing. First of all, I have to enjoy it. I
By
have
the
to
way,
have a good
indeed,
time.
here. Otherwise, what's the point
Yeah,
of art? You know what I mean? This is your
exactly.
art. It's not somebody else's art, it's your art. Anyway, very well done. It has been a pleasure to meet you and to listen to your music and to write, I hope, a few comments that are not too crazy for you in my review coming up at performingartsreview.net. And also, of course, this interview is going to be there, and I'll be sending out an e-blast about it to a zillion people. So
Terrific.
we'll see. Okay,
Well,
many
it's been
thanks,
a pleasure.
Doug Anderson. Many thanks for giving me a few minutes of your evening. Thank you. Bye.
Terrific. Thanks a lot. All right. Bye bye.